From the ending of the Fortnite storyline, as we know, in a huge live event causing us to go back into the black hole, to the release of finally Creative 2.0 in today's video, we're going over 10 huge hints or points as to Chapter 4 being the next thing that's upcoming in Fortnite after this season ends on December 3rd. Trust me, the points only get crazier as the video goes on, with leaks to actually back up what I'm saying, confirmed by Epic Games, so it's vital you're sticking around until the end of today's video, as you also just witnessed a mirror get smashed, which means 7 years bad luck if you don't. I wouldn't risk it. However, very quickly before we dive into it all, one favour I ask of you guys, considering it takes 2 seconds and is 100% free to do, is enter my creator code FM1 3 digits inside the Fortnite item shop. You guys already know this not only puts a giant smile on my face, but cheers up my pug Gus too, who's been kinda sad about the fact he knows that 70% of all eyes watching right now are not subscribed. With that said, hit the big red button now, as we're on our first initial push to 3 million subscribers, and after all, it only benefits you, as I do give different subscribers every single day. So if you ever want to receive something, simply make sure you subscribe to the channel with all notifications turned on, and then comment your Epic Games ID down below and let me know what you'd like to receive, so perhaps you could be gifted like this on screen in front of hundreds of thousands of eyes to see in the next video. But with that said, now enough messing around, these Chapter 4 hints are about to blow your mind, so make sure of course you don't go anywhere.
Don't go anywhere.
I'm sitting on my
Don't
back.
go anywhere.
Firstly today, for those that don't know, on October 13th when I'm recording this video anyways, it's the 3-year anniversary of us going initially into the black hole, or the longest Fortnite downtime planned or scheduled actually by them, lasting a total of 48 hours. Of course, we've seen a similar situation again, but not a black hole, rather so a scheduled downtime with a screen evolving that everybody's forced to see of us washing up onto the Chapter 3 island at the end of Chapter 2's end event. How this all makes sense in terms of us going into Chapter 4 next season, however, is because, as you can see on the Battle Pass, it states Chapter 3 Season 4 through December 3rd, and as you guys may or may not know from data miners finding out tags in the coding, the next season is set to start, which currently says Chapter 3 Season 5, or resembles that season set to launch without spoiling Chapter 4, is December 5th. Of course, Epic Games wouldn't want to let us know in the files way in advance now, or this early on, with us only being around 30% way through Chapter 3 Season 4, that Chapter 4 would be next, especially considering this would make Chapter 3 the shortest chapter ever. But considering we only see downtime lasting 2 days from transitioning from chapter to chapter, rather so from season to season, this is a huge implication in and of itself that we're going into Chapter 4 instead of just Chapter 3 Season 5. And speaking of the end event, but the one transitioning into Chapter 3 instead of the one that happened 3 years ago, transitioning into Chapter 2, or the black hole should I say. For our second point, again referring back to the fact that this season ends December 3rd, but the next one starts whatever we're going into, whether it is Season 5 or Chapter 4, predominantly on December 5th. Believe it or not, December 5th, 2021 is when we actually saw Chapter 3 start. Could this mean, considering Fortnite's not in its prime popularity anymore, or at a fraction of what it once was back in 2018 according to Google Trends anyways, that Epic Games, to keep things new, fresh or exciting for new releases anyways, and just generally the game as a whole, are releasing yearly chapters? This of course nicely being our third point, the fact that Epic Games may be releasing a new chapter every single year around the time of Christmas not only makes sense from one aspect, as Fortnite typically see when a new chapter releases a huge spike in popularity, but this being down to how vague it's been in terms of them releasing in the past, as we've only been through, well, 3 so far. Despite a lot of people coming back to Fortnite, considering the Winterfest event is already huge, the one that we saw in Chapter 3 Season 1 was even more astronomically huge, considering the soon release prior to the event of a new chapter. And overall, children are either going to be getting V-Buck cards for Christmas that they've seen in stores literally in real life and have asked their parents to get them, or they will get their own money that then they want to spend on V-Bucks. And with Fortnite ultimately being a game that's ever evolving, kind of like Minecraft, where there's not a Minecraft 2 in a sense, although you could argue that we're in Fortnite 3 right now considering it's the 3rd chapter, in order to maintain maximum interest, again, it only makes sense. For our fourth point, before we move on to the storyline stuff and even a live event occurring to end off this season, which you won't want to miss, so don't click off the video. I know you're maybe planning to, but trust me, this gets absolutely insane. Despite doubling up every single year on the interest of Fortnite with the Winterfest event that does occur near Christmas, alongside the release of a new chapter, for those that have completely forgotten, Creative 2.0, a new version that will revolutionize how we play Fortnite Creative and just generally create things within video games as a whole, is releasing in December. Despite there being official documentation leaked for this, or insiders have managed to surface to people across Twitter and other social media platforms that have posted it, even if it doesn't launch with the release of the next season as some people rumour, of course other data miners are stating, an anonymous source are claiming that Creative 2.0 is planned for release midway through next season. Again, notice how they haven't determined if it's Chapter 3 Season 5 or Chapter 4, and that they claim that Epic is currently working to make it release as soon as possible. For our halfway or 5th point in this video, now moving or transitioning onto the storyline and even more juicy things. If you haven't been following it, of course this point we're at now now is where the Herald that we saw initially in the Chapter 3 Season 3 trailer looking at the reality tree for whatever reason is currently unknown. She's now the main evil protagonist in the storyline, consuming the island entirely in chrome, kinda like the Cube Queen did with the sideways reality over the island before it flipped. And despite the similarities that we could draw between the Herald and the Cube Queen, with reference to the nothing largely in the description of the Herald's cosmetics that we can unlock, and with us knowing that the Cube Queen wanted nothing to be all that remains from her takeover of the Fortnite Chapter 2 island, with the meaning of her name, the Herald in itself, meaning that it's a sign that something or someone is upcoming, meaning perhaps a huge event, as that nicely moves on to the 6th point of this video, with the storyline matching that of Chapter 2 Season 8 before it ended off into Chapter 3, as the Herald again is a skin releasing that in the coming soon section like the Cube Queen in the Fortnitemares period, as the first unlockable date of which we can obtain her and the first and second page is November 3rd. It's recently been determined from Byte Quests that have released, not at the start of this season but in the 20.10 update, that the Herald of course is a part of the last reality, or under the same faction should I say as the Cube Queen, for those that didn't know that the Cube Queen belonged to this faction. There's still so many mysteries surrounding the last reality, however with the Herald obviously showing similarities in terms of motive to the Cube Queen, it seems like we're getting more of an understanding now as the storyline moves forward as to, well, what the nothing is or what it's trying to accomplish by consuming everything, I guess. Either way, as we move on to the 7th point of this video, it's safe to say we're going to be in for a huge live event, especially if we are transitioning into a new chapter. Of course, just like Chapter 2 Season 3, we didn't see a live event for this summer duration event that Epic Games obviously released and then took vacation through, just like what happened again with Chapter 3 Season 3. Despite this being the case, however, it didn't mean Epic Games were working on no live events at all, as data miners were able to determine in the final updates of Chapter 3 Season 3 that Epic Games were doing certain things or updating certain servers or kind of commands, that there would be a huge live event to end off Season 4, considering it was determined that early on that they were doing such things to imply this, as G-Matrix Games states in this tweet, and considering the live events after a season where we haven't had one have been even bigger in terms of the magnitude, for instance the Galactus live event in Chapter 2, the fact we're currently in a situation of we haven't seen a live event in the last season that we're currently in now, with potential to transition to a new chapter, this would not only be a first in terms of not seeing a live event in the season prior to the final one of a chapter, but of course for that reason then make the chapter transition live event even that much more crazy, insane, and honestly huge in terms of taking over the internet or interest of everyone. For our 8th point, perhaps they're planning this as the storyline, as we know people speculate, with a larger emphasis and focus on creative as time has gone on in Fortnite, with people having their own desires to either create their own maps, modes, or mini-games that everybody seems to be predominantly switching their interest to in Fortnite. Despite the unanswered questions you may argue of Geno not appearing as a forefront in Fortnite right now when I'm recording, or as a skin in any battle pass, and considering from the Fortnite x Marvel Zero War comics we know his story is to be continued, as it's not the end of him fading out of existence anyways or being scattered throughout the Omniverse from touching the uncontrolled 0 point. Speaking of this character's involvement in the storyline moving forward, or the ending of it, as we know with the Herald kind of concluding Chapter 3, in terms of characters being involved in a new chapter but us knowing about their existence prior to the release of that chapter, this has happened with the Foundation. Many may have forgotten initially introduced in Chapter 2 Season 6 in that particular trailer before going straight into the Zero Crisis finale, which of course wasn't a Battle Pass skin until, well, Chapter 3 Season 1, and we didn't know Dwayne The Rock Johnson was underneath the mask until the Chapter 2 Season 8 end event, where we finally knew the whereabouts as to where the Foundation went. Could the same context of this apply to Geno as we enter a new reality island, or even if it just flips back over? Imagine that. For Chapter 4 we just flip back the island onto our Chapter 2 one with everything now destroyed. Who knows, perhaps the slogan for this would be #flipped back. I honestly hope that's not the case, considering that's not the innovative or exciting move Epic Games I know could pull off. Instead, what it looks like they are doing for our 9th and second to last point, for those that haven't heard yet, it seems Epic Games are already working prior even to the release of this season, like the live event, on a new map. Initially this was just a test supposedly on the servers that nobody paid attention to in the slightest, but with the codename being changed, this alone, to Asteria, this of course correlates to the names or codenames in the files of the other Battle Royale islands we've seen for Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and Chapter 3, being Athena, Apollo, and Artemis. All of these names are in reference to Greek mythology, and the interesting thing about Asteria is supposedly, for those that don't know, was an ancient Greek goddess who could transform herself, or did, into an actual island, of which then on said island Artemis and Apollo were born on. Does this mean we're seeing a prequel to Fortnite's storyline so far from the nothing taking over, and perhaps us going back in time from the potential of the everything being the 0 points, countering the nothing again as we enter a black hole but it expands and the 0 point once again existing? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Alongside our final, last but not least, 10th point of the video being a huge innovation to Fortnite as we know it, a first-person mode that they're working on. Of course, huge changes to the game itself are only made from chapter to chapter as we go through, and I was surprised Zero Build was integrated from a season transition, but it made sense with the storyline. And despite first person being initially teased in chapter 2, season 2's device live event from a glitch happening to certain players, literally forcing them into this POV. Although Zero Build was permanent for everybody across all modes for the first 2 weeks of chapter 3, season 2 as a part of the storyline, I don't see a way for them to be able to integrate first person into the storyline so easily. On top of that too, we have other huge updates upcoming, like what we saw transitioning into chapter 3. They initially introduced sliding, so with things like motorbikes set to release still, as we do have wildlife that we can ride this season now, or this chapter should I say, as this may be the last season of it. Could vehicles like this, motorcycles, be an indication also that we're going to be seeing, well, these new vehicles in a new chapter, or determining a new chapter releasing itself on December 5th. Slap a like in the video down below if you love the idea, and make sure you subscribe to the channel with all notifications turned on so that you don't miss any future content. In terms of where you go to now, however, make sure to click the video I picked out for you individually on screen, but most importantly, hopefully I can catch you in that very next video I do post on the channel.